Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Music of the Mat Remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. I'm your host, Andrew Rich, joined today by a returning guest. He's a contributor at Voices of Wrestling. It's JoJo Remy. Hello again, JoJo.
Hi, Andrew. Nice to talk to you again.
Glad you're here. Yeah, definitely. Last time you were on was a little over a year ago. We did the Beatles episode, which was a lot of fun. And it's funny, the show gets uploaded to YouTube, and the view count, it's not that much to sneeze at. The majority of episodes have around 20 to 50 views.
Okay.
Some a little bit more, some a little bit less. But that episode, the Fab Four Horsemen episode, that has like 150 views. It is easily the most listened to episode on YouTube in years. And I was wondering, what's the episode before that did that well on YouTube? And it was the Keiji Muto / Great Muta episode that me and Gerard did some years ago. That did, I think, 200 views or so. So you popped a number there, JoJo. You're quite the draw there.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I had no idea. Hopefully we can do it again with this one.
Yeah, hopefully this episode does gangbusters, get a nice little trend going there, but it could also do 10 views. You just never know with YouTube these days, unfortunately. But today, JoJo, we are doing a sequel episode to one I did some ways back. It was an episode called Curtain Jerkers, which was album openers, and this episode will be album closers. You had a good name for it, finishers, which is good. The one I came up with to go along with the card placement naming convention is main eventers. You have curtain jerkers who open the show with the first match. Main eventers, they're the big stars who close the show with the last match, the main event. And I talked about with curtain jerkers opening matches, they do have the onus of setting the tone of the show and getting it off on the right foot. The onus of the main event is to end the show on the right foot and have a satisfying ending. And that's not an easy thing to do, in any medium. Endings are pretty hard. Lord knows I've watched plenty of TV shows where they can't stick the landing and just leave a bad taste in people's mouths. And, that last season was terrible and the finale sucked, etc., etc. And Lord knows I've seen plenty of wrestling shows where the main event drops the ball and can't live up to the rest of the show, which I think makes the good endings come off that much better, JoJo.
For sure. I mean, I think in the context of both a wrestling show and an album, right, you want some sort of build where there's an emotional arc throughout the experience. And, I think it's a little bit different for albums because we kind of, in retrospect, picked, fitting last acts, so to speak. But in a wrestling show, it's kind of a lot of times made or broken by that main event, which isn't so much true for albums. But yeah, I think we have some absolute classics and then some also, lesser known ones on both sides.
Mm-hmm. It is a bit of a double-edged sword as far as wrestling main events go, I think, because on the one hand, you do get to be the marquee act, the guy on all the posters, winning the world title, making the most money, your name in lights, all the cliches. But on the other hand, the burden is on you to prove that you belong at that level by selling tickets, by, drawing eyeballs, by putting in strong performances with main event matches. I talked about this actually on Alan Forel's show, Pro Res Paradise, a couple months ago. But when you get that tap on the shoulder, you have to show that you want it. Look at guys like Kenny Omega or Will Ospreay, Hangman Page, Swerve Strickland. Those guys get the tap and they step up. Kento Miyahara is a main eventer because he always steps up. Kyle Fletcher is another guy who, whenever he gets put in a big spot, he steps up. And again, it's not an easy thing to do. Not everyone can do that or has the drive to do that. But if you really want to be a main eventer, you have to show people that you want it, JoJo.
For sure. And it's, once you have been given that opportunity to, perform on that stage, it's about, delivering consistency that the promoter can rely on to go back to you again in that spot. So, in wrestling, it's really, carving out a place for yourself on the card for a period of time. Obviously, runs at the top end, but it's about that consistency and the confidence that the promoter has in you to, end the show on a climactic note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll never forget Wrestling Dontaku 2021, Night 2. This was the dark days of pandemic era New Japan. 5-match cards, clap crowds, just awful, awful vibes. And that show got rearranged a bunch because a bunch of guys tested positive for COVID. But the main event was Ospreay versus Shingo. And they needed to hit a home run on that show to save it. It was basically a one-match show, and they were it. And they not only hit a home run, they hit a grand slam. And that was like my favorite match of that year. It was incredible. And that's what I mean about the burden of being a main eventer. The pressure is on. You have to deliver, and they delivered. It was quite something, JoJo.
Yeah, I mean, the mere fact that you have a pandemic era New Japan main event that's etched in your memory like that is a testament to, those guys stepping up and making the best of the situation and, delivering a memorable performance. Obviously not the only time that they have faced off against one another, but, a memorable one nonetheless.
Definitely. Well, all right, let's get to the music here. We have 10 picks each and a play-out song at the end. And this was difficult for a couple reasons. Number one, there are just so many great album closers to choose from. It's impossible not to leave off dozens and dozens of favorites. And the other problem is, so many times I would think of a song, be like, oh, that was the closer, and I look up the album, and it's second to last. I mean, that happened an annoying amount of times, JoJo. I don't know about you there, but...
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to my wife, Christine, about it, and she was like, oh, you have to do the end, the Beatles song. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm not sure if we did it or not, but it's not the last song, right? You have Her Majesty after the end on Abbey Road, which is, we could have done that one, but, I think there is a certain amount of kind of artistic license that any performer has when putting together the track list, and a lot of times there is kind of like a tag at the end, which isn't really necessarily the most memorable climax of the album. So yeah, it was tricky for sure.
For sure, yeah, you gotta watch out for those hidden tracks.
Yeah,
for sure. But JoJo, you are the guest. You'll go first. What's your first pick?
Yeah, so my first pick is the band's I Shall Be Released from their 1968 album, Music from Big Pink.
They say everything can be replaced. They say every distance is not near. So I remember every face
Yeah, just, an epic ending to a stellar debut album by one of my favorite bands of all time. A cover of a Bob Dylan song, a really poignant set of lyrics, about a man who's imprisoned, just, longing for the day that he sets foot a free man. And the vocal delivery by Richard Manuel is just so devastatingly beautiful, and it's a really great performance, to cap off a great album, and I think it's fitting of that last spot on the track list.
Yeah, you've got me feeling all verklempt from the jump here. It's too early for these emotions, man, but but that's, it's one of the recurring themes of this episode, the fact that a lot of these album closers are so fondly remembered because they end the album on such an emotional note. And this on its face is a pretty heavy song about, a guy trapped in prison and reconciling with his past, and any day now, I shall be released. He has that hope that he'll be free, but it's not that day. It's already a heavy song, but you add in the ballady instrumentation and Richard Manuel's heartbreaking falsetto vocals, that puts it over the top. Plus, the added context of knowing that Richard Manuel would eventually take his own life and be released from this mortal coil, as they say. It's quite impactful, JoJo.
For sure. I had never thought about it in that context before, but that's kind of a through line in all of Richard Manuel's, not all, but I'll say a lot of his, memorable vocal performances on band records. He just has this chilling, passionate, vocal quality that really cuts through a pretty dense instrumentation, and the pairing of the three voices, Levon Helm and Rick Danko together. It's not as clean if we think about like the Beatles harmonies or the Beach Boys harmonies. It's not as clean, but I would put those three up against any vocal trio in rock history for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's also one of those songs that have been covered, a bajillion times. Like most Bob Dylan songs are, which, he wrote this song, but you look at the Wikipedia page for this, and it's everybody from Sting to Bette Midler to Wilco, Nina Simone, Coheed and Cambria, Kesha. Like it's become one of those pop standards over time, JoJo. So
for sure, and here in the Tampa kind of local rock scene, it's a pretty common cover that people will close shows with. I think it has reached that kind of, slot in the folk rock awareness, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. All right, my first pick. This is from 1970. Elton John put out an album called Tumbleweed Connection. And the closing track on it is a song called Burn Down the Mission.
Behind four walls of stone, the rich man sleeps. It's time we put the flame torch to their key. Burn down the mission.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite Elton John songs on one of my favorite Elton John albums. It's an album that gets overlooked because it doesn't have the big hits like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road does or Hunky Chateau. but it's excellent. It's a concept album about Americana and the Wild West, and it doesn't paint a pretty picture. A lot of the songs are rather stark and dour. I mean, this one is about a guy inspiring his people to burn down the mission where the rich man sleeps to stay warm, to stay alive, because things are so rough. And then he gets captured and taken away from his wife. So yeah, not quite Crocodile Rock there. But man, the way he builds it up in the chorus and the orchestration, his voice is just note perfect. And you have these like wild boogie down sections. It kind of conjures up these images of people dancing around the fire, celebrating the destruction, celebrating the chaos, and the beauty all at once there. So yeah, just a top-notch song there, JoJo.
Yeah, it has kind of two distinct sections. One that's just more like ascending, ethereal progression with, like you said, that like beautiful vocal performance. And then, a more kind of frolicking, rocking piano. But yeah, great song, great performance. Similar to something you might hear from the band we just talked about last, in terms of kind of the mood, I would say, and kind of the subject matter. So some parallels there, but yeah, great song. And one of my favorite Elton John albums for sure too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is like the one song from this album that endured on his set lists up to his farewell tour. And he would actually extend it even longer to like 10 minutes or whatever. But I actually had another Elton John song on the short list, the song Harmony from Yellow Brick Road. That's another beautiful song, but I went with this one instead there, JoJo. So.
Yeah, the other thing I noticed about this one, this is the thing on a lot of this era of his albums, early 70s albums, but the bass playing is amazing too, which is, something that I have, a special interest in, but that just kept, every time I would listen to the song, I just kept noticing the bass line. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we talk about Elton John. It's not just him. He's got a band. He's got, a writer. It's a group effort for sure.
Yeah.
But all right, JoJo, what's your next pick there?
Yeah, so my next song is from 1967, Jimi Hendrix Experience from the Axis Bold as Love album. It's Bold as Love.
My red is so confident he flashes trophies of war and ribbons of euphoria. Orange is young, full of daring, but very unsteady for the first go round. My yellow in this case is not so mellow. In fact, I'm trying to say it's fighting like me. And all of these emotions of mine keep holding me from giving my life to a rainbow like you. But I'm bold as love. Yeah. Well, I'm bold as love. Hear me talking, girl. I'm bold as love. Just ask the Axis. He knows everything. Yeah.
Yeah, such a vibrant and, vivid song, some amazing singing from Hendrix, which is not really what he's known for. Obviously, the guitar is always the, taking center stage, but a great vocal performance, some really cool lyrical imagery and kind of, a psychedelic, as you would expect, slant on everything. And, a great rhythm section backing Jimmy on this one. But yeah, just one of my favorite Hendrix songs. And, I would say Axis Bold as Love is my favorite Hendrix album. And this is just such a perfect end to it. Really putting his, guitar soloing and kind of what makes Jimmy front and center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a few episodes ago, I played Spanish Castle Magic from this album, which I love. And this is another really good deep cut, which, it's quintessential Hendrix because on the one hand, yeah, you've got these very metaphorical, literally colorful lyrics about emotions and the colors of the rainbow and happy turquoise armies, all this psychedelic imagery, far out, man. And then on the other hand, he closes out the song with this just nasty guitar solo that strips the paint off the walls. It's very much a duality of man situation where this guy can be both the poet and the badass guitar player at the same time, JoJo.
Yeah, like the lyrics are, I would say, very Bob Dylan inspired, as Hendrix was at this point. But yeah, he's using, I would, assume he's using his, Fender Stratocaster into a very loud Marshall amplifier with a fuzz pedal, a fuzz face, and that's it, right? Like in this era of guitar effects, it was basically you can make the guitar louder and you can a little bit change, the EQ of the sound, and he was known for that fuzzy guitar soloing, which is really front and center here. And we talked about covers before of the previous song. This is one where I'm quite familiar with the cover as well by John Mayer on his Continuum album, which adds some kind of very pretty background vocals and is pretty true to the overall performance, but it's a lot cleaner than this one, which, as you said, it gets pretty fuzzy and dirty towards the end.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned short lists. I had Voodoo Child on my short list because that's the last song on Electric Ladyland. But if you look at all three Experience albums, they all have great closers. This, Voodoo Child, and the song Are You Experienced?
Yeah.
They all end their albums strong in their own ways, too. Experience leans more into the trippy psychedelic stuff. Voodoo Child is just guitar excellence. And Bold as Love is, somewhere in the middle there, JoJo.
Yeah, for sure. I think those albums are distinct and similar at the same time, and I think as complete works, they all have their own arcs and their own sounds, and you can kind of while he didn't really have a very long career, you can really see like a huge burst of creativity that really drove some of the greatest albums, especially guitar albums of all time. So yeah, Hendrix definitely knew how to show up for the main event.
Yes, sequencing, very important for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of psychedelic mumbo jumbo, my next pick, this is a fellow named Todd Rundgren, who put out an album in 1973 called A Wizard, a True Star. And he closes that album with Just One Victory. Yeah, if you've never listened to that album, it's a trip, literally. Todd Rundgren was inspired by his psychedelic experiences, shall we say. It's 19 songs. They all segue into each other. Most of them are like 1 to 2 minutes long and very strange. But it also has a handful of like songs that keep from going too over the edge. And this is one of them. This ends the album on a really strong and really hopeful note as well, because it's about coming together and overcoming hardship. The time has come to take the bull by the horns. We've been so downhearted, we've been so forlorn. We get weak and we want to give in, but we still need each other if we want to win. We've been waiting for the sun to rise and shine, shining still to give us the will, bright as the day to show us the way. Somehow, someday, we need just one victory, and we're on our way. We're praying for it all day and fighting for it all night. Give us just one victory, it will be all right. I mean, if that doesn't feel, just as relevant in 2026, I don't know what does. But, it's a smart choice to end the album because it's like, the acid trip is over. Everything's going to be okay, JoJo.
Yeah, it's very uplifting and almost has like a gospel feel to it. And I'm quite familiar with Rundgren's 2 records before this one, Runt and Something Anything, but I had never really given this one a real chance just because, as you mentioned, leading up to the song, it is kind of all over the place. But yeah, he's not someone who I would really attribute uplifting, or I wouldn't really like describe, first words come to my mouth is uplifting, but yeah, this is definitely that, and really epic, and just, everything you want out of an album closer. And like you said, after all that, chaos that precedes it on the album, to finish up with a really clean pop song, as we know Todd Rundgren can do, is really cool.
Yeah, it really shows how diversely talented Todd Rundgren is, because I think most people, they know Todd Rundgren, they know him from a song like Bang the Drum All Day, which is in various cruise ship commercials, or Hello, It's Me, or I Saw the Light. But he's got a much bigger and more diverse catalog than that. He is a very, very talented guy who has dipped his toes into a lot of different pools, both solo and with his various bands like Utopia and Nas. And he's produced a bunch of albums too for other artists. So yeah, just again, a very, very talented guy is Todd Rundgren, JoJo.
Yeah, for sure. I think may misspeak here, but I'm pretty sure he produced an album by XTC in the 80s, which I like a lot. And yeah, I'm pretty sure he was at one point in Ringo Starr's All-Star Band, playing those hits that you mentioned. But yeah, when I think of Todd Rundgren, I think of like a lot of, pretty piano ballads, but at the same time, he can write really searing lyrics and soaring guitar solos at the same time. So he's really a jack of all trades that really, I think most of his success was probably in the 70s, but has been going for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking at the list here, he produced Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf. Pretty big album there. The New York Dolls self-titled debut album. Skylarking by XTC. He produced The Psychedelic Furs, Bad Religion, Cheap Trick, The Tubes, Hall & Oates, Badfinger. So yeah, some very notable names under his watchful eye and ear in the studio there, which is pretty cool. But all right, JoJo, what's your next pick there?
So my next pick is a song from 1973. So we're going forward a few years here on a quintessential classic rock album, Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. This is Eclipse.
How you feel, and all that you love, and all that you hate, all you distrust, all you save, and all that you give, and all that you deal, and all that you buy, big borrow or steal, and all you create, and all you destroy, and all that you do, and all that you say, and all that you eat, and everyone you meet, and all that you slight, and everyone you fight, and all that is now, and all that is gone, and all that's to come, and everything under the sun is in June, and the sun is eclipsed by the moon.
Yeah, such a great ending to one of the best albums of all time. you hear that heartbeat at the end as you hear in the beginning. That descending arpeggiated chord structure really, acts as a perfect climax to such an epic album. Roger Waters, who wrote that song, sings lead vocals. His voice sounds great there, I think. Obviously, there's a lot of harmonies in the background too, but his voice really cuts through. And just a beautifully recorded, beautifully performed album that has quite the epic feel-good ending. At least sonically, I'll say.
Yeah, we have a lot of obvious picks this episode, and this is definitely one of them. There's a real strong sense of finality with this song. First of all, calling it Eclipse on an album called Dark Side of the Moon, love that. Roger Waters saying, all that you, blah, 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 all, it's all under the sun, and the sun is eclipsed by the moon. Background singers going crazy, the heartbeats, which bookend the start of the album and speak to me. It's very cinematic, and the album itself is cinematic. The way it flows, and the sound effects and the dialogue in there. It's total prog rock concept album nerdery. But yeah, it's also one of the best albums ever, and it just feels right to end an album like this, JoJo.
Yeah, as I was going through and picking these songs, I was like, I feel like I'm kind of going chalk here with the obvious picks, but then when I thought about it, I'm like, of course you're going to go obvious picks because those are the memorable ones. So I have a few that are less known, but I didn't shy away from picking the, so obvious they hit you over the head with how perfect they are to end a classic album, and this is definitely one of those. We have a few more of those coming up, but I think Dark Side of the Moon is such a perfect package as it exists, and there's so many kind of like reoccurring harmonic things that happen throughout the album, and like I said before, it's recorded so beautifully, and you wouldn't know that this is from 1973. I think it's one of the most well recorded albums of all time. It's just so clean and almost alive sounding, how it was recorded.
Mm-hmm. And the guy at the end going, "There is no dark side of the moon, really. Matter of fact, it's all dark." That's a guy named Jerry O'Driscoll, who was the doorman at Abbey Road. And they got him in the studio, asked him a bunch of questions, and the answers he gave, those are some of the snippets that you hear on the album. But that last line, matter of fact, it's all dark. Again, the sense of finality. Mm-hmm. You can't get a better ending line than that, I don't think, JoJo.
Yeah, and it's just like so layered and, I won't say psychedelic in the Hendrix sense, but like, almost, it gives you the sense of like uneasiness, but the music itself is so uplifting that it's a really interesting juxtaposition there between kind of like the eeriness of how it's produced with, the music itself.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get modern for my next pick, something actually from this century. This is Fall Out Boy. They put out an album a couple of years ago called So Much for Stardust, and the closing track is the title track, So Much for Stardust.
Burning myself down, burning myself down, burning. I feel like something that's been stretched out over and over again. It's in a crease and I'm about to break down the middle, spin me right down the middle, right down the middle, yeah. The stars are the same as ever, I don't have the guts to keep it together. Stuck in the permafrost, stuck in the permafrost. Life is just a game, maybe. I'm stuck in a lonely loop, my baby. So much for stardust.
So I picked this song for a couple different reasons. Number one, I just think it's an awesome song. I'm a sucker for the dramatic tension in the verses with that piano melody. And you can feel it's just going to explode in the chorus. And then it does. And it sends that, that endorphin rush into your head. That's classic Fall Out Boy. They're really good at those kind of songs with the big emphatic choruses. But the other reason I picked it, and this is kind of in the context of listening to the whole album, it's a good bookend with the opening track, which is a song called Love from the Other Side. And that has the line, "You were the sunshine of my lifetime, what would you trade the pain for?" Those are said again in this song. And there's another line in the opener, "Sending my love from the other side of the apocalypse." And Stardust has kind of a fatalistic end of the world feel to it. So much for Stardust. We thought we had it all. And even Pete Wentz called it a fitting way to end the album. So, it's not like a classic as some other picks are this episode, but I love it just the same, JoJo.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with the song at all, so I was interested to hear it, and I haven't heard the rest of the album, but I would describe this one also as cinematic, is a word you used earlier. I think the production is really good, and it builds a lot of tension, like you said, leading into the chorus, which is important. But I enjoyed it. It has a catchy hook, and just a really good vocal performance as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the album as a whole is really good. It's funny, it's like their second comeback album, because the one before this was an album called Mania, which was very like electronica based, and this one was like a return to guitar form. So, while also still having a lot of like fun pop hooks that they're known for, JoJo. So, I recommend it for sure there. So.
Yeah, really catchy, melodically, and at the same time, really aggressive guitars and really good production. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Mm-hmm. All right, what you got next, JoJo?
So I think this is going to be my most recent song, definitely from this century. I think the only one from this century. So this is from one of Jack White's bands called the Raconteurs, one of my favorite contemporary bands, although they haven't had an album in quite a few years at this point either. But this is off their second album, which is called Consolers of the Lonely. And it's the last song, obviously. It's called Carolina Drama.
It was a junk house in South Carolina, held a boy the age of 10. Along with his older brother Billy and their mother and her boyfriend, who was a triple loser with some blue tattoos that were given to him when he was young, and a drunk temper that was easy to lose, but thank God he didn't own a gun. Well, Billy woke up in the back of his truck, took a minute to open his eyes. He took a peep into the back of the house and found himself a big surprise. He didn't see his brother, but there was his mother with a red-headed head in her hands, while the boyfriend had his gloves wrapped around an old priest trying to choke the man.
Yeah, so, quite an epic story song to end what's otherwise a pretty hard rocking, as you would expect from Jack White album. Great rhythm section here. Patrick Keeler and Jack Lawrence, who are also in a band called the Greenhorns. One of my favorite songwriters and kind of solo artist, Brendan Benson, is actually playing the slide guitar there. He's the other member of the band. And, Jack White just really has this story of kind of, this kid that's confused about, who these kind of older men are in his life and what their relation to him is. And there's like a murder that happens in it. So yeah, it's a really story-driven song and cap off to, one of my favorite albums of all time for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, as much as I enjoy the White Stripes and Jack White, I'm actually not too familiar with the Raconteurs. I know a couple of songs, Steady As She Goes and Salute Your Solution, but this song I never heard of. before, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, we talk about songs that build up. Usually that's in terms of the music, which this does with the La 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 stuff coming in later on, but it also escalates, narratively with the violence and the drama and the tension and all that. It's kind of like a gritty crime thriller in a way. But that makes sense because Jack White is telling you this as a story. That's how the song is being presented, JoJo.
Yeah, for sure. One story I've heard Jack tell about this song is that the main character of the song is Billy, but as he was writing it, he didn't have the name Billy. He had the name Eddie, and he was working on writing the song, and he brought the song to none other than Bob Dylan, who I think told him to change the name from Eddie to Billy. That was Bob's only contribution to the song, but I think
Billy,
exactly, yeah. It makes it. I think it makes it pop a little bit more, and it definitely adds to the song. But yeah, the Raconteurs are pretty much like a power pop or blues rock band. So this one is a lot more lyrically driven, and I think a fitting end to that album. But yeah, if you haven't heard much of their stuff, I would recommend checking out their first two records for sure. I've actually seen them live, probably close to 7 or 8 times. Definitely the Jack White, lineup that I've seen the most. But I think that's driven by the fact that Brendan Benson's also in the band, who's a great songwriter. But yeah, one of my favorite bands for sure. And I would say I've listened to this record as much as I listened to any record that's come out in the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm. I'll check it out for sure. I also like with this song as well. Going from the Hendrix and Floyd songs earlier, which are so abstract and metaphorical and all that, and deal with such deep concepts, man. And then to this song, which is so blunt and literal, here's the story, here are the characters, here's what happened. It's all quite visceral and matter of fact, JoJo.
Yeah, it doesn't really, strike me too. I mean, obviously Bob Dylan has songs like this, but it feels more of like well, we're going to talk about Ray Davies in a little bit, but it feels more like a little bit like Ray Davies lyrically. It almost feels a little bit like Springsteen lyrically to me, just a little bit more, matter of fact, everyday language and a lot less metaphor and, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going back to the 70s with my next pick. This is a band called UFO. And they had put out an album in 1977 called Lights Out. This is the closing track, Love to Love.
The other half's just too sad. It's westbound moons only rise and fall. Lost you and I want you today. Misty green and blue. Love to love you. Misty green and blue. Love to love you. To be something, to be near you. I don't know where I'm going to. I've tried and I need you to stay.
So another recurring theme of this episode is that a lot of album closers are epics. Epics in terms of length, like a lot of them are at least 6 minutes long. This is 7.5 minutes long, but also epic in terms of composition. Like with this song, you have the long, drawn-out intro with the keyboards, then the guitar comes in, and then after like 3 minutes, we finally get vocals after 3 minutes, and they're so passionate and about lost love and wanting to be near you, misty green and blue, love to love you, and there's strings, my God, there's strings. And then it ends with this cool guitar solo from Michael Schenker. It's a big to-do. It's a big show-stopping number that you can't boil down to just a minute-long snippet. You have to listen to the whole thing to really appreciate it. But if you're going to end an album, it might as well be with an epic, JoJo.
Yeah, it almost feels like 3 separate songs. And the guitar solo at the end is what really sticks out to me. It's like amazing, really incredible solo. And I wasn't familiar with the song or this band. And I think you've made a new fan. I definitely enjoyed it. And, it took a little while to get going, but like you said, it was the instrumentation, kept me interested. And then finally, when it paid it off with, the proper lyrics and, the song starting almost, it really builds. It kind of has that same arpeggiated chordal structure like we talked about with Eclipse, which I think is common kind of in that, this type of epic song. So there's some similarities there, but yeah, great way to close the album. I assume I haven't heard the rest of the album, but the song itself, really impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, UFO is one of those bands that is ripe for exploration because they've got some rock radio staples like Dr. Doctor, Lights Out, Too Hot to Handle, but they're not as well known as some of their contemporaries. So I'd say check out their albums from the mid-'70s to early '80s if you're looking for a sweet spot. And if you want a starter album, go with Lights Out because that's their best album.
That's this album, right?
That's this album. If you want a live album, Strangers in the Night. That's also a great snapshot of them at their best.
Mean, would you call this metal? It feels more like prog rock to me. I guess there's a metal aspect, but
there's some progressive elements in this song, but for the most part, they're primarily a hard rock / metal band. But their early stuff, their first couple albums was actually like space rock. Which makes sense because UFO. But starting with the third album, Phenomenon, that's when they shifted over to hard rock, and you get songs like Dr. Doctor and Rock Bottom, and stuff like that. So I'd say that's a good starting point with the UFO sound that people know of for the most part there. So
yeah, this kind of reminded me of like, kind of like David Bowie, early 70s David Bowie, to be honest. It was quite enjoyable, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got that fellow coming up later on, so don't spoil anything right there. But what's your next pick there, JoJo?
Yeah, so we're staying, I almost called it contemporary, but, staying on music that was released during my lifetime. One of my favorite bands of the 90s, a band that I saw last summer. It's Oasis with Champagne Supernova.
Wake up the dawn and ask her why. A dream, she never dies. Wipe that tear away now from your eye. Slowly walking down the hall, faster than a cannonball. Where were you while we were getting high? Someday you will find me caught beneath the landslide in a champagne supernova in the sky. Someday you will find me caught beneath the landslide in a champagne supernova, a champagne supernova. 'Cause people believe that they're gonna get away from the sun.
Yeah, just a really another epic song here. Great vocal performance by Liam Gallagher. Great guitar solo by Noel Gallagher. Really interesting production with, some water sounds, and it really builds up from, kind of this early morning feel, kind of like, a dewy, kind of foggy morning, and then it, blooms into this quite epic and, soaring sound. that I think is one of Oasis's, most well known, but also, most, I would just call it one of their best songs, right? Like I feel like Wonderwall is probably their most well-known song, but I feel like this is just so much better than Wonderwall in every way possible. Really one of my favorite songs, and I would say, just the vocal performance is what carries it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Oasis, I'm at the point where I am actually sick of hearing Wonderwall. I don't need to hear it again. I'm also kind of sick of Don't Look Back in Anger and Live Forever. But I'll be damned if Champagne Supernova still doesn't get me. Talk about like an epic. I mean, that thing just bowls you over for 7.5 minutes. Those feelings of longing and nostalgia and disappointment all rolled into one. The layered guitars, it still hits. And even Noel Gallagher, who wrote the song, even he is like, look, the words are a bit of nonsense, but when I'm playing it live and I see the fans going crazy, that's what the song means. And 30 years later, fans are still going nuts for this song that just connects with them, JoJo.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is something that you see quite a bit in the Oasis catalog, is that the lyrics aren't really what carries the song. It's, the catchiness of the melody, the vocal performance, the guitar riffs, a lot of times the lyrics are kind of play second fiddle to the rest of it. But yeah, when we saw them last summer, it was just, I've seen Paul McCartney several times. I've seen I don't even know what like the next biggest act I've seen other than McCartney. Maybe Clapton or Rolling Stones, I suppose, is probably the second biggest. But this was right up there in terms of like people crying in the stands and stuff. Really emotional for a different generation of fans, I guess. But yeah, really epic and really just for me a nostalgic song that makes me think about kind of my youth. A lot of these songs obviously came out way before I was alive, so I don't really have like a memory of when they came out. But I remember, when this came out, I remember there being a lot of buzz around, the second Oasis album, and it being something special. And even though I've heard the song countless times, it never gets old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't go to the Oasis reunion shows last year, but I did look up the set list, and this was the last song on the show.
Every night.
Encore.
The same set every night.
Yeah, very appropriate, very fitting, and Hello was the opener, which again, very, very fitting. But yeah, by all accounts, yours and my friends who went to the shows, they were great shows, and it's very impressive as well that they managed to get through the whole tour without imploding. That's also pretty damn cool, I think, JoJo. So
for sure, yeah. We actually, when we were in Japan, we saw both brothers separately. Noel played at this place called Makuhari Messe, which is kind of like a convention center. But Liam actually played at the Budokan, which was really cool. I saw a few concerts while I was there at the Budokan. Like, we saw McCartney there, which is obviously epic, and we saw Clapton and we saw John Mayer. But the other one we saw was Liam Gallagher, which was pretty cool too.
Mm-hmm. All right, my next pick, staying in the British camp here. This is a band that some people love and some people hate. This is a band called Muse, and I went with the closing track off their album Black Holes and Revelations. This is Knights of Sidonia.
Time or time will wait.
So there was a time in my life around 2007, 2008, where that was my favorite song. I would listen to that song every day on my iPod on the bus ride to school. And listening to it again, I can see why. It's like this space cowboy adventure song that throws everything at the wall. Big power chords from the start. Ba, 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 ba. Surf rock, electronica, a galloping beat, frantic riffs, falsetto vocals, political overtones. The entire pounding last section of the song. Like, I can't properly describe the whole thing. There's just so much in there. And I think that's why I fell in love with it as a teen. It just sounded like the coolest thing I'd ever heard. And I would come up with scenes in my head to go along with the music. And as is the case with this show, I've fallen back in love with this song after many years, JoJo.
Yeah, this one I would say is the song of yours that instantly resonated with me. Upon first listen, I was like, whoa, this is awesome. This is epic. As you mentioned, it has like so many different kind of nods to other musical genres, whether it's, a spaghetti Western or, space rock, or even like, kind of Guitar Hero-y stuff like Hendrix, or, I even hear like a little bit of like Iron Maiden type stuff, which I know you like too. But yeah, this one really, really hit with me, and it has so much going on that, I feel like a lot of other people would feel the same way about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I first heard it actually in Guitar Hero. It was in Guitar Hero 3.
Ah, that makes sense.
And,
yeah,
it's one of the harder songs on the game there. So I was hurting my fingers, strumming along and trying to keep up with it. But I love it. Yeah, Muse, like I said, a rather polarizing band. They're polarizing to me. I mean, I fell off of them after a while. I don't love everything that they've done, but I like a lot. Namely, their 2000 stuff, like this era with Black Holes and Revelations and the few albums before it, Absolution and Origin of Symmetry. So I get the complaints about them. They are, like I said, a lot to deal with there, but they've got a lot of good stuff. I can't lie there, JoJo. So
yeah, really kind of arena rock, just epic and in your face and kind of theatrical at the same time. But yeah, I think it's, like I said, something for everyone kind of in this song. And yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And a fun fact, Matt Bellamy, the frontman, his dad, George Bellamy, was in this group called the Tornadoes in the 60s. And they had a song called Telstar, which was the first U.S. #1 for an English band. And it's actually kind of spacey and futuristic, and it actually ended up inspiring the guitar sound in Knights of Sidonia. So the dad, inspiring the son there with the music, which is it's pretty cool there, JoJo.
Yeah, that's impressive. Really impressive.
Yeah. But all right, JoJo, you are also keeping the British train rolling here with your next pick. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so this is a song that I'm sure quite a few, if not all of our listeners have heard. It's from 1969. There's a single version, but this is the album version. It's from the album Let It Bleed. It's the Rolling Stones. You Can't Always Get What You Want.
And I went down to the demonstration to get my fair share of abuse, singing words gonna vent our frustration. If we don't, we're gonna blow a 50 amp fuse. Sing it to me. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, will you just might find you get what you need.
Yeah, the album version here starts with a choir, which is quite epic from the jump. Um, just such a great groove that eventually they lock into. Some very universal, for the most part, lyrics that everyone can relate to. A great vocal performance by Mick Jagger. I recently learned that Charlie Watts actually does not play drums on this, which is crazy.
That's in my notes. Yeah, I was going to say.
The drums are just so good. It's kind of crazy that it's not Charlie Watts, but yeah. And, the other thing that really just speaks to how crazy the late 60s, early 70s were for music. So this song was a B-side, meaning that it wasn't like the lead single on the single record that was released. The A side was Honky Tonk Woman, which is obviously another radio hit for the Stones. But to release this as a B side just speaks to how they were churning out hit after hit at the time.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's fitting that this song came out right as the '60s are ending, because it does serve, I think, as a reflection of the big themes of the decade. The first verse is about love. The second is about political revolution. Third's about drugs. And these things people thought would lead to this big upheaval that didn't turn out to be the case at all. The bums lost, Mr. Lebowski. The bums will always lose. But there is still a little bit of optimism there. And it's also fitting, I think, that this is the closer, because the album starts with Gimme Shelter. And that song is such gloom and doom, Vietnam War, rape, murder, ear-piercing vocals from Mary Clayton. And again, this offers a little bit of hope to counterbalance that. It has a choir, it has a French horn, some jaunty piano. It's the little bit of sunshine after the storm, you might say, JoJo.
Yeah, for sure. It's, if I think about it in terms of like where it kind of fits in musical history, at least for the big British bands, right as the Beatles were kind of winding down, the Stones pretty much took that mantle into the 70s. And, I see this song as kind of the passing of the torch. Definitely some similarities between this and Hey Jude. But yeah, with the gospel choir in the beginning, and just that really funky syncopated rhythm. It is quite uplifting. Another word that we've mentioned quite a bit. It's epic. It's uplifting. It's a feel-good ending to an otherwise, as you mentioned, kind of dark album. But yeah, just I think really, there were a couple of options here for the Stones I could have picked. I thought about Moonlight Mile, which I love, off of Sticky Fingers. But to me, this one is just really everything that you want in an album-ending song, a main event, right? I feel like putting a big hit single like this at the end of the album is going out with a bang. So yeah, that's why I picked it.
Mm-hmm. And we mentioned Charlie Watts doesn't play drums on it. It's Jimmy Miller, the producer, on drums, Mr. Jimmy in the song there. And the guy playing piano, organ, and the French horn is Al Cooper, who played the organ on Like a Rolling Stone and founded Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And he also produced Leonard Skinner and did a bunch of other cool stuff. So yeah, quite the resume on that guy, JoJo. So
yeah, for sure. An accomplished studio musician that eventually became kind of one of the heavy hitters in the rock and roll world. So yeah, I think that was also kind of par for the course at a Rolling Stones session in the late 60s, early 70s, right? You get people like Ry Cooder and Eric Clapton and allegedly like Graham Parsons, who we'll talk about in a bit. Just dropping into these sessions and showing up on the record. So yeah, you never know if, when you look at the liner notes from these records, it's always quite impressive to see how many of these accomplished musicians kind of show up on other people's albums.
Mm-hmm. Not a bad group of friends to have around to help you make music. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my next pick, going back to the more contemporary-ish stuff. This is from 2018. It's the debut album by a band called Superorganism, all one word. And this is the closing track. It's called Nighttime.
They were restless for those refills, superimposed on a green screen. Your aim was what to fit, and arrange, bring battle in. I just wanted to be our crown, sitting like a claw in my brain in the nighttime.
So I figured after all the classic rock and epic craziness, we needed some friendly, eclectic pop music to shake things up a bit. So you've got like these deadpan vocals about staying up late at night, which are very appropriate actually because it kind of makes you sound like a zombie with the deadpan stuff. Scrolling through Facebook, aimless web surfing, curious cam girls. Mix that in with some very pleasant harmonies. Oh, in the nighttime, and some whispers sprinkled in, wake up, wake up, wake up. And you have sound effects there too, like crickets in a car, an alarm clock, someone yawning to end the song. It's a bit of cutesy fun, and that's what Superorganism provides. It's pop music with a little twist there, JoJo.
Yeah, but under all of those kind of, sprinkles of production, there's like a really solid musical, driving force underneath it all that, I feel like is like the perfect soundtrack for like a late night drive. Is the main thing that really stuck out to me is that I if I had to pick one song to listen to, driving down a dark highway with like, not much lighting other than my headlights, I feel like this song kind of would fit perfectly.
Yeah, they're definitely talented for sure. I mean, beyond just the eclecticness of themselves, they definitely have a lot of talent. I discovered them on the FX show Legion a few years ago because they guest starred on the show doing one of their songs. And the history of it is fascinating. It was formed by members of this New Zealand band called the Eversons. And the lead singer is a Japanese high school student who was studying in Maine at the time, which hooked up with the band. And they made this first album remotely over Facebook and WhatsApp, just sharing pieces with each other, online. And they only have 2 albums, and they're on hiatus, I think, right now. But they're both great albums. I recommend them for sure if you want more of this, like, really kind of quirky but very catchy and fun to listen to pop music, JoJo.
Yeah, and it's like it's easy to listen to, but in like not a background music type of way. It's like, it's interesting enough, and it takes enough like twists and turns through the production that it keeps, a pretty steady, otherwise musically song interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would totally be, up for listening to more of this group.
Definitely, yeah. And I mentioned this a few episodes ago with Mora, but check out their NPR Tiny Desk concert because they play the songs with like a bucket of water and a soda bottle. It's very eclectic stuff there and pretty funny to look at. But it works. It works for this band there. So check that out. But all right, JoJo, what's your next pick?
So I, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on which way you slice it, have no more contemporary music. Everything we're gonna run through now for the rest of the show on my side is 60s and 70s stuff. So
shocked,
yeah.
Good sir.
Yeah, and so we're gonna go 2 years into the future from where we were last. I think probably recorded at the same studio as the last song. But this is a song that I'm sure everyone listening, if not, a very high percentage of you have heard. It's from the Who's 1971 album, which is called Who's Next? This is We Won't Get Fooled Again.
The change it had to come. We knew it all along. We were liberated from the folded song. And the world looks just the same. And history ain't changed. 'Cause the banners, they are flown in the last war. I'll tip my hat to the new Constitution. Think about for the new revolution. Sonic green, the change all around. Pick up my guitar and play, just like yesterday. Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. No, no.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick one song that just perfectly represents the Who, it has to be this one, right? You have an amazing bass line from John Entwistle. You have, this driving, frantic, hectic, but at the same time solid beat from Keith Moon. You have these synthesizers that were, quite of their time. Kind of laying down this foundation for these great guitar licks from Pete Townsend. And then just, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but like one of the best rock and roll vocals of all time from Roger Daltrey. It feels, this I think probably feels like the chalkiest pick of mine, which is, a statement. But it's such a good song, such a good album. And it fits its role on that album so well. Another one like Dark Side of the Moon is just like an all-time classic album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll be honest. I was very tempted to just pick the part towards the end where it's just the keyboards, and then Keith comes in with the drums, and then the most famous rock scream ever, maybe. And just have that be the clip, because that section is iconic by itself, But yeah, I mean, what else can you say about this song that hasn't already been said a million times before? It's an incredible song on an incredible album that I never thought of this way before. But this song is kind of like the harsher, more cynical version of "You Can't Always Get What You Want." Take out the optimism from the Stones song, take out the choir, take out the fun little piano, and add in these stabby keyboards, the more powerful guitar work, the more powerful drums, make it faster, and go with the message, change, revolution, it doesn't matter. It's all the same bullshit no matter what. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. That's the message, that's the big line from the song. I never really connected those dots before with those two songs until this episode. But yeah, look, it's a chalk pick, but come on, it's still an awesome song, JoJo. So
yeah, this album for me is one of the best of all time too. It has so many other like equally awesome songs that just flow into this one. Behind Blue Eyes.
Baba O'Reilly,
yeah. Even like
Bargain,
Going Mobile,
yeah.
I love. Yeah, Bargain. Are you kidding me? Yeah, it's
Song
such a
is
great
Over.
album.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's like a product of a very tumultuous recording process for the Who and Pete Townsend. I think almost ended up in the band breaking up, but they got through it, and they came out on the other side with quite the keeper, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know people love Tommy and Quadrophenia, but I actually am kind of glad that the Lifehouse project, the Lifehouse, rock opera that Pete Townsend was working on, that ended up failing because we got this album instead. I think it worked out better in that case. So
Yeah, it's like real tight, real short. It's not Tommy, which is like very sprawling, right? Quadrophenia the same way. Even like the Who Sell Out, which is one of my favorite albums of theirs.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of a concept album of like a pirate radio station, but that doesn't really last the whole album. But the Who don't really have a lot of like just tight package albums that kind of just have a bow like this one. So I feel like it really stands up to anything that anybody was putting out at this time, and I think it's my favorite Who album of all time.
Same. And we have to mention as well, this song became a meme because it was the theme song to CSI Miami. And whenever David Caruso would say some pun and put on his sunglasses, it would smash cut to the Roger Daltrey scream. There'd be like 2 dead bodies on the golf course, and he would go, "Looks like this case is a double bogey." Every time without fail, it'd make me laugh, JoJo. So,
yeah, it's crazy how like songs like this one, or they reach this level of cultural awareness that they're no longer just known as the album, the album ending song on a classic Who album, but they take on this other meaning, which I think is a testament to how widespread it was in the first place. But yeah. Sometimes I'm surprised, like, how many people are aware of, classic rock songs for other reasons than, just, the role they play in rock history.
Yeah. Well, I got good news for you, JoJo. All of my remaining picks are also in the classic vein here. So we're in the same boat, you and I.
Let's do it.
My next pick, this is a favorite of mine and a favorite of Patrick Bateman as well. This is Phil Collins from his 1985 album No Jacket Required. This is the closing track, Take Me Home.
I can come out to find you. I don't like to go outside. They can turn off my feelings like they're turning off the light. But I don't mind. No, I don't mind. Oh,
No Jacket Required. It's the album that made Phil Collins an even bigger pop star than he already was. Sussudio, One More Night, Don't Lose My Number. But it ends with Take Me Home, which is probably my favorite song of his. I actually first heard it in an episode of Mr. Robot. It's in a great scene on that show. And it rides the line between hypnotic and lulling with the drum track, and anthemic and passionate in the chorus. And that works well for the song because Phil was inspired by One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So it's about a guy in a mental asylum. I can't come out to find you. I don't like to go outside. They can turn off my feelings like they're turning off the light. So this character goes between pacified and resigned, and then these bursts of pleading energy, it seems. So it makes for a rather affecting ending to the album, JoJo.
Yeah, wow, I didn't realize that about it lyrically. I was thinking, I watched the music video of it, and it, I mentioned earlier that Superorganism song sounded like a nighttime drive. To me, this sounds like a daytime drive, which is, informed by the music video. But yeah, I mean, a really cool use of, the drum machine. Obviously, the vocal, like Phil Collins to me you know, is primarily, or at least like in my mind, or the thing that I love about him the most is the vocal performance, which this song is certainly in line with that. It was released in the year of my birth, which I feel fondly about. And I think, in general, there's a very like Miami Vice kind of Miami, my memory of growing up in Miami, kind of vibe to a lot of Phil Collins stuff. They play him a lot at like Miami Heat games. Very much part of like kind of the fabric of the city. So yeah, I feel very fondly about Phil Collins, and the song is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, Phil Collins was on Miami Vice, and In the Air Tonight was on the show as well, of course. But it's also cool. Peter Gabriel, his Genesis bandmate, and Sting do background vocals on the chorus section there, which is pretty cool. And this also became the de facto final song for Phil's live shows. There's a really good live version on YouTube from a show in Paris in, I think, 2004. And he turns it into like this like kind of conga rhythm thing, gives it a little bit of a different flavor. He ends it with like a back and forth with with the audience. Take me home, take me home, take me up. Kind of like Freddie Mercury would do, back in the day. So, Phil Collins solo, Phil Collins Genesis. I love Phil. I love the guy, JoJo. So there you go. But
yeah, how much like collaboration was there between Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel, like in that period?
They did a couple things like this, and I know Phil was on Peter Gabriel's third solo album. Because the thing about Genesis was, Peter left the band, but there wasn't like bad blood between them. They were still friendly. So you had these moments of collaboration, like this, JoJo.
Yeah, and to throw Sting in there too, like for that time period, like huge pop stars. Like I don't even know what the modern day equivalent would be, but just like whatever the three biggest vocal pop stars are of the time, like together on the same track is pretty crazy.
Yeah. All right. What's your next pick there, JoJo?
So my next pick is, as you mentioned, a bit of a technicality, but it, in the creative mind of the songwriter Brian Wilson, this song was the climax to his now released, but at the time, for a long time, unreleased album, Smile. 1966, I guess, was the original release of it. Good Vibrations.
I love the colorful clothes you wear and the way the sunlight plays upon her hair. I hear the sound of a gentle word on the wind that lifts her perfume through the air. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Picking up good vibrations. Close my eyes, she's somehow closer now. Softly smile, I know she must be kind.
Yeah, I mean, what can we say about Good Vibrations? I think it's really the one of the quintessential, 60s pop songs. Really encapsulates the whole summer of love, hippie, creative outpouring that happened really Brian Wilson being one of the main, drivers of that in the U.S. So, obviously, Pet Sounds is kind of seen as, one of his, crowning achievements, one of the best albums of all time. Smile was the follow-up to Pet Sounds, which never saw the light of day in its originally intended form until much later. But this was envisioned to be that final climax. So yeah, just an all-time song, an amazing performance by both, the Beach Boys themselves, but also, the Wrecking Crew, the studio musicians that were on this song. Amazing bass playing. I think there's a couple of different bass parts in this song. Obviously when we talk Beach Boys, we have these amazing harmonies, really cool instrumentation, just like, an all-time classic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when you posted this, on your list there before the show, I was like, well, Good Vibrations was a single. I know it was also on Smiley Smile, but it wasn't the closing track. But I remembered, okay, yes, technically it was the closing track on the unreleased album, Smile. So I gave you that one because I'm a good guy there. But seriously, like you said, what else can you say about this song that hasn't already been said? It's maybe the greatest song of all time, which is funny because it came out like a few months after God Only Knows, which also might be the greatest song of all time. Like, that's the crazy thing. Like, if you're knocking out Pet Sounds and Good Vibrations in the span of a year, you really are a genius. The problem, as you said on the show before about Brian Wilson, is that genius was also his burden, because he was so obsessed with getting everything perfect and translating the music that was in his head onto a record, and he just couldn't manage it. I mean, making this one song took, 7 months, and was the most expensive pop single to make at the time. Over 90 hours of tape, and that's just one song. It's no wonder Smile collapsed. The process to make this whole thing was too much, especially in those days when artists are putting out new albums, new songs, every other month, it seems like, JoJo.
Yeah, I mean, it really, obviously we ended up with a great version of it, but the amount of actual physical tape that was used to create this, and the sheer number of expensive studio musicians who coming back and forth to studios in LA, just trying to wrap this up to meet Brian's expectations. Obviously we ended up with an all-time classic, but the process to get there, I think, was a lot for the rest of the group to handle, and a lot for Brian to kind of to get past. We talked about the use of some of these songs in other media. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Vanilla Sky, but it's in a really there's a really cool scene in that movie where this song is used. But just obviously part of the fabric of pop culture, and just an all-time classic.
Mm-hmm. I haven't listened to any of the other Smile Session songs except for Heroes and Villains. That's another good song, but I haven't heard Vegetables or Wind Chimes or Barnyard, Cabin Essence. I know there's the box set, the Smile Sessions, but there's also Brian Wilson Presents Smile, which he put out in 2004, where he redid all the songs, and that got a lot of praise. So maybe I should check that one out, JoJo.
Yeah, I have it on vinyl. It's really good. There's a rumor that I don't think is supported by the liner notes of it, though I should check, that as I alluded to before, you never knew who would pop up on someone else's session, and there's a rumor that the chewing of carrots on the track Vegetables was done by Paul McCartney. But yeah,
did he chew them left-handed though? That's how you know.
Yeah,
that's how you know.
But yeah, just It is a great album as it was released on the Smile Sessions. Wind Chimes is particularly one of my favorites of like the lesser known Smile only songs. So yeah, you should check it out.
All right. Well, my next pick here. Let's go up to Canada for the self-titled debut of one of my all-time favorites. This is Rush, and the closing track is it's the big one. This is Working Man. So the first Rush album, it's a much more straightforward 70s hard rock album. And that's because it's before Neil Peart joined the band. This is the only album with John Rutsey, the original drummer. So Geddy and Alex pretty much wrote all the lyrics. Hence why this album has songs like Working Man, Finding My Way, In the Mood. And the next album, Fly By Night, has songs like Bytor and the Snow Dog, and Rivendell, and Anthem, because that's Neil. He's the nerdy bookworm. But Working Man, despite it being so quote-unquote simple, at least lyrically, it's the most important Rush song of all time, really, because this is the song that broke them in the States. Donna Halper was a DJ in Cleveland at the time who played Working Man on her show. The song blew up because Cleveland was a working-class town, a factory town, and that's what led to Rush touring America. And Geddy and Alex are still friends with Donna. In fact, when they announced last year that they're going to be doing a new tour with the new drummer, one of the people that they invited to the press conference was Donna Halper. So Working Man, it's not my favorite Rush song, but it's such an important piece of Rush history. JoJo.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy this song. It's, a lot more straightforward than I would typically expect of Rush. It, has that real, like, power trio feel in traditional sense, like very riff heavy. It kind of gets into like kind of Hendrixy or Cream type, like, traditional blues rock territory. So it's really amazing to see how much they grew as a band over the next 10 or so years as they kind of evolved their sound. But yeah, I saw a really weird version of this on YouTube that was like reggae version, which I quite enjoyed too. Have you seen that?
I have not. No.
Yeah, check it out. But and like coincidentally or as planned, right as I finished listening to the song, I got an Instagram ad because Rush is coming to Tampa for 2 shows later in the year. So I'm like now thinking about going just because I've been listening to this song over the last couple of days.
The algorithm got you.
Yeah.
It got you.
I wonder if I could even get tickets. I'm assuming you still can get tickets.
In my heart of heart, I want to because they're coming to Boston as well, but I know it's going to be tough with, the prices and everything like that. So I'm hoping somehow, but I did want to tell this story. I told it years ago on the show, but when my mom died, we sat Shiva at the house, and one day this woman came up to me and offered her condolences, and after she left, my dad said, "Oh yeah, that was Donna Halper. She's the one who discovered Rush." And I was like, "What? That was her?" Because she's from Boston. She lives here. And I was so shocked that I had met her. But since then, I've spoken with her many times because my work, I've been a radio producer, and she's been a guest on a show that I produced. And she's a really sweet person and a very knowledgeable radio historian as well. So yeah, that's my connection to Rush there, JoJo. So
That's amazing.
yeah. But all right, what's your second to last pick, JoJo?
So I would probably, if not the Raconteurs song, I would say that this is probably the least known song of my selections. So this is from a band called the Flying Burrito Brothers, which was a country rock band that grew out of the Byrds, that was fronted by Graham Parsons, one of my favorite musicians of all time, and Chris Hillman, who was a member of the Byrds. And this is from their debut album, which is called The Gilded Palace of Sin. And this is the closing song, which is called Hippie Boy.
So they can back some hot new tank or atom bomb. But what I'm gonna tell you now, you can stay or you can leave. You kind of listened to my story so far, but just one more thing. It's the same for any hippie, bum, or hillbilly out on the street. Just remember this little boy and never carry more than you can eat. Now could you help us sing this song?
Yeah, as you hear there, it has quite the, kind of gospel feel, and the ending there with the organ and the kind of choir singers. But yeah, just an interesting way to cap off what is otherwise a pretty straightforward country album. And not your country album in the sense of like modern country as you would hear today, but kind of that traditional Bakersfield sound. Merle Haggard, Buck Owens, that's kind of where this fits in, but it's, played by a bunch of rock and roll guys. So a really interesting album. And, lyrically, this song is kind of a rambling story of an interaction that Chris Hillman has with this hippie boy in a park. There's, some allusions to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago of 1968, which obviously there was a tragedy. But it's a bit of a hodgepodge, but an interesting end to an amazing album.
Yeah, my knowledge of the Flying Burrito Brothers is quite limited. I know it was the band that Graham Parsons was in after the Byrds. And I know that when Graham Parsons died, his friends stole his body and set it on fire at Joshua Tree, which is a crazy story. But as far as the music goes, I'm a blank slate. And I gotta be honest, this is not the kind of song that would turn me on, or should I say, turn me on to the band, folks. Because it's a spoken word song, but I understand, you're writing about the 68 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, the riots, police brutality, the Chicago 7 and all that. I get the importance of writing a song about that stuff. It just doesn't grab me as a song there, JoJo.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like I said, the album itself is pretty much country. So this one, it kind of feels different from the rest of the album. Like you said, spoken word, which is a little weird. But yeah, I think, musically underneath you have like an interesting kind of soul meets gospel, thing that kind of bubbles underneath this kind of weird story. I think it kind of also fits into kind of the end of that, hippie period. Obviously, this is kind of that like, heading out of the 60s into the 70s. Obviously, like, the Byrds and Graham Parsons and Chris Hillman were were very famous, like as pop stars in the '60s, but heading into the '70s, a lot less, in the mainstream, as evidenced by this album. But yeah, Graham Parsons is one of my favorite songwriters of all time. Before he was in the Byrds, he was in a band called the International Submarine Band, which they have a really great record. The Byrds album, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, is the only one that he's on, and that's a great album. And then he has 2 solo albums that came out after these 2 Burrito Brothers albums that are awesome too. So if you're looking to kind of hear some, not mainstream country that has some interesting lyrics and good singing, I can definitely recommend Graham Parsons.
Mm-hmm. I will say the album cover did catch my eye, namely the suits that the band members are wearing, because they're all wearing these like custom sequin suits. They got like flowers and birds on them, and the one Graham Parsons is wearing is marijuana leaves on it. So they're very snazzy looking suits, JoJo.
Yeah, those nudie suits, and I think there was the band Wilco took a liking to wearing those suits, inspired by the Burrito Brothers at one point too. But yeah, I mean, Graham Parsons is also an interesting character because, when you think of country music, especially in the '60s, it's a much more, conservative, not rock and roll scene at all. But he kind of bridged the gap, along with others. But, he was one of the pioneers bridging the gap and making, what's called country rock. So yeah, he's definitely not, what you think of when you think of like, country music like Merle Haggard or Buck Owens or George Jones or something like that, although he does have that same kind of vocal quality.
Mm-hmm. All right, my second to last pick. This is, again, a classic, 1973 here. Stevie Wonder put out an album called Inner Visions, and this is a song called He's Mistra Know-It-All.
He's a man with a plan, got a counterfeit dollar in his hand. He's Mr. Know-It-All, playing hard, talking fast, making sure that he won't be the last. He's Mr. Know-It-All, makes a deal with a smile, knowing all the time that his lies are mild. He's Mr. Know-It-All, must be seen, there's no doubt. He's the coolest one with the biggest mouth. He's Mr. Know-It-All. When you tell him he's living fast, he will say, what do you know?
So it's a song about a con man, a flim-flam artist, if you will. He's a man with a plan, got a counterfeit dollar in his hand, makes a deal with a smile, knowing all the time that his lies a mile. If he shakes on a bet, he's the kind of dude that won't pay his debt. It has a real gentle, like, swing quality to it, which kind of makes you think of, like, a con man lulling you in to a false sense of security before he pulls the rug on you, which is pretty clever there. The song is allegedly written about Richard Nixon, but I could think of another president that it might fit that bill. But one of the reasons I picked it, besides the fact that I like the song, is that I'm just tickled pink by how long the fade out is. Because usually a fade out is like around, 5-10 seconds, maybe a little longer. But I swear, it takes like a full minute from the start of the fade out until the song actually ends. It goes on forever. But if it's the last song on the album, I guess you can take those liberties, JoJo.
Yeah, I mean, Stevie was definitely pumping out some amazing albums at this time. So whatever production choices he wanted to make, I think I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. but yeah, this is, in that kind of classic period of, a run of albums in the early to mid 70s where Stevie Wonder was like pretty much the greatest thing going. And, it's interesting too, because lyrically this is like very, cutting and kind of, scathing. But like you said, musically, it's kind of like laid back and easygoing. And obviously, like Stevie Wonder can write aggressive, funky, just more in your face music. But he chose to pair these lyrics with, this laid back music kind of arrangement, which I think is an interesting, pairing here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want the more aggressive version of this song, "You Haven't Done Nothing" is the one to go with there. But yeah, it's funny. I saw a little while ago in the VOW Slack that you picked up "Talking Book" on vinyl.
Yeah.
Which is part of that classic period that Stevie had in the 70s. Which, if I'm picking from, I go with Intervisions. I go with this album. It's the one I like the most because it also has Too High, Living for the City, Higher Ground, All in Love is Fair. That's my Stevie album of choice, JoJo.
Yeah, even Higher Ground, like, that one lyrically is more positive, but musically is a lot more in your face. So yeah, Stevie could really do anything, musically, and obviously like he played so many instruments and just amazing vocalist. I really think he's like, up there with anyone else in terms of, all-time classic rock, soul, R&B, whatever you want to call it, just like all-time albums.
Mm-hmm. All right, JoJo, what's your last pick of the episode? Your closer for this episode of Album Closers, JoJo.
Yeah, so if I had to pick my favorite album of all time, I would pick Revolver by the Beatles. If I had to pick a different album, because we just talked about the Beatles, I would pick this album. Interestingly enough, it's produced by Ken Scott, who also worked on Revolver. This is David Bowie's 1972 classic, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust. This is the closing song, which is Rock and Roll Suicide.
Too young to choose it, and the clock waits so patiently on your song. You walk past the cafe, but you don't eat when you've lived too long. Oh no, 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 you're a rock and roll suicide. Shift breaks the snarling as you stumble across the road. But the day breaks instead, so you hurry home. Don't let the sun blast your shadow. Don't let the milk float rob your mind. They're so natural, religiously unkind. Oh no, love, you're not alone. You're watching yourself, but you're too unfair. You've got your head all tangled up with a fucking...
Yeah, just heart-wrenching lyrics, such an emotional vocal performance, such an amazing horn arrangement. Really reminds me of, things like Otis Redding. But nonetheless, it's the closing song on an album about, an alien rock and roll, frontman. So, really interesting album and a great way to end it with, just, one of the most emotional rock performances that I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a song that kind of became a quadruple ending of sorts because it's the last song on the album, and it depicts the end of Ziggy Stardust, his career, his life, and then it was the last song on the Ziggy Stardust live shows that Bowie did, And then it was the last song that he played as Ziggy Stardust. The quote he gave is, "Not only is it the last show of the tour, but it's the last show that we'll ever do." So yeah, it's the definitive end of Ziggy Stardust in one way or another there, JoJo.
Yeah, and the rest of the album, while it kind of like flirts with other genres, I feel like this is like the real kind of like nod to soul music. It's not as guitar forward as a lot of the other stuff. Obviously, like Mick Ronson plays such a huge part on this album. But this one is a lot more stripped down instrumentally until the horn section kind of comes in. And yeah, I think obviously, like as we've talked, and as I mentioned in my introduction to the song, like the Beatles are my favorite band, but there's something about this album, just like the way it's produced, how the arc of the story, how the songs all fit together, that I find it hard not to say that this is my favorite album of all time. There's so many great songs on it, and this is not epic. I wouldn't say the song is epic at all. It it's an appropriate ending, but I think it's different from a lot of the other songs we've talked about in that it's a lot more raw feeling, and it does feel like the end of something that in itself was epic, but the ending is less epic.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bowie, he was also on my short list with I Can't Give Everything Away, which is the last song on his last album, Black Star. And you talk about finality. I mean, you can't get any more final than the last song you hear before, he dies. That's pretty much the ultimate closing chapter right there. Even though they've put out other Bowie stuff since he died, that song and that whole album is him basically saying goodbye, JoJo.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if there would have been an opportunity for me to see David Bowie live, but it's something that I obviously didn't get to do. And I feel like that would have been an amazing experience. It's one of those regrets that I have. Like, I've seen a lot of my heroes play live, but Bowie's one that I haven't. And, unfortunately I won't get that chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to see your favorites while you can. I know it can be difficult with ticket prices again and scalpers and bots and all that stuff, but if you do manage to get the means to see them, then go see them before it's too late. So, all right, my last pick, and it's my turn to get technical here, because this is a double album. The Kinks put out an album in 1972 called Everybody's in Showbiz. And the first disc is studio songs. The second disc is live songs. And I picked the last song on the studio disc. And it's my show, so I can do that. This is a great song. This is Celluloid Heroes.
If you covered him with garbage, George Sanders would still have style. And if you stamped on Mickey Rooney, he would still turn round and smile. But please don't tread on dearest Marilyn, 'cause she's not very tough. She should have been made of iron or steel, but she was only made of flesh and blood. See all the stars as you walk down Hollywood Boulevard. Some that you recognize, some that you've hardly even heard of. People who worked and suffered and struggled for fame. Some who succeeded and some who suffered in vain.
We played a lot of favorites in this episode, and, well, here we go again. I mean, I think that's my favorite Kinks song. It gets me every time, because it takes a common subject in songs, which is, fame, and gives it a tangible metaphor, the Hollywood Walk of Fame. and it goes through the famous names you see on there: Greta Garbo, Rudolph Valentino, Mickey Rooney, Marilyn Monroe, and it melancholically talks about their success and their struggles, that duality. Success walks hand in hand with failure along Hollywood Boulevard. Just because you're famous doesn't mean you can't fall down. And it also has the duality with the Walk of Fame itself. Yes, you get your name on a plaque on this street, but people walk over them every day. They walk over your name, they walk over your legacy, they drop trash on you, they puke on you. So it's just such a smart bit of writing on Ray Davies's part. And he sounds great too. His vocal work on this is excellent as well. So yeah, all in all, just an amazing song by the Kinks, JoJo.
Yeah, I love the Kinks, and I feel like their kind of 70s output is not as well known as their 60s output, but it's just as strong. I think the rhythm section is super groovy in a lot of these songs that are really driven by the lyrics, but underrated rhythm section. Yeah, he's such a good lyricist, and like he's so good at taking like a mundane subject and making it come to life in a new way. And you talked about his vocals, like not known as like a belter of a singer at all, but he just like his vocal always fits the song so well. And can sing any style, can write any style. Such a good songwriter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, late 60s, early 70s Kinks. That's some good eating right there, because you got like Village Green Preservation Society, Arthur, Waterloo Sunset is around that time, Lola, and then they go into their rock opera era, and I don't really care for that stuff, but then they come back with their arena rock era with Sleepwalker and Misfits, and that's when I jump back in. But the Kinks are another band that just has a massive, massive catalog, JoJo.
Yeah, and I believe this to be true, but correct me if I'm wrong. You are somewhat of like a classic film buff as well?
I like movies a lot. I've seen a lot of them. I wouldn't call myself like a learned scholar of the classic stuff. There's a lot of that I haven't seen.
Yeah. I think, it's
I've heard of all the actors in the song, I know of them.
But it's
I may not have seen their movies, but, I'm aware of them at least.
So that's kind of my point, right? Like, I don't think I've seen any movies with any of these actors, but like these are the names that he selected at the time. I've obviously heard these names, but I think even at the time in the 70s, like this was, the meaning that like these names were already confined to the Walk of Fame and being walked over, like you said. Like I think it's interesting to focus on actors from a bygone era, even at that time when he could have used contemporaries from the 60s and 70s, but instead he's talking about actors that are from like the 30s and the 40s.
And now this song is over 50 years old, so it's that era is even further back now. It's just the march of time just keeps going on, and it kind of gives it even more of a poignancy, I guess. But
Wikipedia says that there's a Steve Vai cover of this song.
Oh,
I cannot even imagine what that.
What does that sound like? My goodness, I'll have to check that one out. Yeah, but all right, that was the episode. Those were our picks, and JoJo, this was a lot of fun. We kept it classic for the most part, as we are wont to do whenever you're on here. A lot of big names, a lot of big songs, but when the songs are that good, it's hard not to pick them. But this was great as always, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, a lot of big names, and hopefully a lot of YouTube views again. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Any plugs you want to give? Go right ahead.
No plugs. I'll just, I think we usually talk around this time of year when, unfortunately, I'm assuming for you as a New Englander, football is wrapped up, but what that means is we're heading into baseball season. So, the hope springs eternal. Is that what they say? So hopefully it'll be a good year for my fish. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it as always, and looking forward for talking again soon.
Absolutely. Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, all the great shows on there, voicesofwrestling.com, previews, reviews, articles, things like that. Blue Sky at Music of the Mat and at Just Andrew on Blue Sky. If you want to leave a comment about this episode, share your picks of album closers, voicesofwrestling.com/Discord. It's also where I post the Spotify playlist for each episode. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice, and leave a nice rating and review. Alright, so the playout song, I went with the closing track from the self-titled debut album of The Pretenders. This is from 1980, and this song is called Mystery Achievement. Thanks again, JoJo.
Thank you.
Mystery achievement. Don't break down my neck, no. I've got no trophies on display, I signed them away. I mean, what the heck? All of your promises. Don't fill me with pride, no. I just wanna get out on the floor and do the Cuban slide. Slide, slide, slide. But every day, every night time I find mystery achievement, yeah, on my mind, on my mind. Every day, every night time I feel, yeah, mystery achievement, yeah, so unreal.
Music of the Mat is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. The songs used throughout this show are property of their respective copyright holders.
My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungy AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines. And we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.